While almost everyone is sharing the most polished and curated versions of themselves, making sure we find our light, that the filter is right, the hashtag is tight, check out my gig from last night, and the sandwich I ate after all in one bite, Braxton Cook is asking, who are you when no one is watching? Actually, as it turns out, it's a question he's asking of himself, and in a somewhat postmodern and ironic twist, he's doing it publicly and on his new record called Surprise. Who Are You When No One Is Watching, which comes out this week. Welcome to The Third Story. I'm Leo Sidran. Braxton Cook is an artist of his time. That is, he's hard to define, hard to categorize, he's overqualified, determined to share his most authentic self, prepared to be vulnerable, and in a constant state of searching. He's a Juilliard-trained saxophone player who's worked with jazz artists like Christian Scott, the Christian McBride Big Band, John Batiste, and Marquis, as well as more mainstream artists like Solange, Knowles, and Misch. He's also a deeply sensitive solo artist. He's a singer, a songwriter, a producer, and a multi-instrumentalist who's committed to keeping the saxophone alive in soul music and to speaking his own personal truth in his songs. He bridges the gap between jazz and soul and alternative R&B. So, basically he's a millennial guy, which maybe explains why one of his earliest records was called Millennial Music. What you hear behind me is Indie, one of the instrumental tracks from his new record. We spoke recently about his trajectory, starting out on the local scene in Washington, D.C. as a college student. He spent 2 years at Georgetown University before transferring to Juilliard to pursue his jazz education. We talked about his evolution from soloist to singer, sideman to leader, and son to father. The value of nostalgia and deep emotional connection in his writing. We talked about intentionality in raising children, his determination to make music with impact. We talked about where he cut his teeth, and if that has anything to do with his lifelong fascination with dentistry. Braxton is on tour this spring. You can visit braxtoncook.com for all his dates. And guess who else is heading out on the road this spring with a new record? It's me. My new project, What's Trending, comes out on March 10th. And I'll be at Rockwood 3 in NYC for the album release on March 10th with a killer band and a bunch of special guests. And then I'll be in Europe for most of April with my groovy French band. Check out my artist website, leosidran.com, for those details. More websites for you. Third-story.com is the place to go to sign up, subscribe, visit the archive, check out the sandwich I ate in one bite. You know this, hundreds of conversations with brilliant and creative people are there for you. Then it's patreon.com/thirdstorypodcast, where you can go to do whatever you want to do while no one is watching. And it's WBGO.org/studios, where you can check in on my good friends and partners at WBGO. And please consider leaving a review or some stars on Apple Podcasts. Here's me and Braxton Cook talking it down. Man, Braxton Cook, I'm so happy to meet you. Your name has been floating around in so many worlds. Your name is floating around, and it is hard to even figure out where to put you,
Yeah, that could be a good thing or bad thing, but I take it as a compliment, and that's because, I've just worked with a lot of different artists, I guess, with a lot of different musicians, and I know I've started in a very traditional jazz sphere, right? Studying at Juilliard, and then even working with Christian Scott, Donald Harrison, and John Batiste and Christian McBride, and some of these more traditional jazz artists. But I've just always had interest musically in other spheres that were basically that kind of branches off of the tree of soul and black music, like R&B and gospel and all these other styles of music, hip hop. I've always grown up listening to all these different styles of music in my house, and I think upon moving to New York and just hanging out with a lot of different artists and musicians in my generation, I just started to get in touch with all of the styles that I just grew up on, that I felt truly made me feel whole, musician as a person. I'm fortunate to be able to actually do that, I guess.
I read that you heard Grover Washington play the solo on Just the Two of Us, and that was the thing that got you excited about playing saxophone. And ultimately, where you are right now makes perfect sense when you think that's the thing, and that was the context in which you heard the saxophone, and you were like, that's what, because it was in popular music. It wasn't in instrumental music.
I did not hear, even though I've grown to, I love it and obsess over Cannonball Adderley and Charlie Parker now, but no, I was not 10 years old and I didn't hear a Charlie Parker solo and then say, that's what I want to do. It wasn't that. It was through a period of researching and studying the influences that Grover Washington had, that I then found those geniuses and architects of the music and art form. But no, I think it was just the two of us, and it was that tenor solo that Grover Washington took, and I found that he even wrote the tune. And I was even more impressed by just like the composition, songwriting, and ability to really write as well. And then other artists like Michael Brecker, even like hearing cameos, Candy. Mm-hmm. That solo was crazy. And then again, delving into his influences and finding Coltrane and Sonny Rollins is one of his huge influences, and then obsessed with Sonny. It was a lot of R&B, really, a lot of R&B and soul music that featured horns and featured in particular saxophone that just stuck out to me. You know, I got three brothers and we all listened to some of the same music in the household back in the 90s, but for me, the horn solos, I'd have them memorized. You know, I love those parts. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes I find myself forgetting the lyrics and stuff to the song, but remembering the sax solos and remembering Earth, Wind and Fire horn intros and things like that, right? And eventually, through studying and learning those lines and then finding, you know, a lot of the jazz musicians that influenced those artists.
So you grew up in the DC area, right?
Yeah, exactly. Suburbs of DC. So I grew up in Prince George's County, like in Greenbelt, Maryland. And then for a short while, moved to Atlanta from like 2000 to 2005. Yeah, my family moved down there. And
how old were you at that time?
And I was 91, so 10 years old.
Yeah.
I moved down there 5th grade through 8th grade. And it was a very, pivotal time, honestly, for me. That's actually where I got into music. That's when I first joined band class, down in Atlanta in 5th grade. And in the middle school I started delving more to the R&B stuff, like I was saying. And then 8th grade, I think I joined a little jazz club in 8th grade where we played some holiday Christmas music, Deck the Halls and kind of, stuff like that for like a winter concert. It's the first time I think I ever really checked out jazz. And the band director in 8th grade was actually a jazz musician. And I remember he scheduled it's one of these assemblies where like the local high school, which was North Springs High School, came to my middle school, which was Sandy Springs Middle School, and did a little master class. And it was cool to just see high schoolers also playing jazz at that time, right? Because as a kid, sometimes you just need to see someone that looks like you doing something, and that had a lasting impression on me. And then shortly thereafter, I moved back to Maryland, this time not Prince George's County, but Montgomery County. And I moved to, I went to what's called Springbrook High School. It was Wyman Jones was my band director. And I then met Paul Carr. And anyone from Maryland, DC area, needs to know Paul Carr is just a legend and truly a genius in jazz education. Like really brilliant guy and great dedicated educator. So Paul just got me, on the straight and narrow as far as just like transcribing Charlie Parker and Cannonball Adderley, learning lines, learning by ear, and he's and leading me along the path of like really being a jazz musician.
I had heard that you grew up outside of DC and that you stayed there for college before you transferred, and that your father was a professor. And I had this general sketch, but I didn't know the Atlanta piece of it. And
I don't talk about it a lot, but it was important.
I just almost wonder if I know DC is the South.
It is, yeah.
But I wonder if spending those kind of middle school years in Atlanta actually, also, I don't know if you would have like heard different music or if you think it would have come out the same way either way.
No, it wouldn't have been. Some of my it's funny that some of my largest musical influences now that maybe you even hear my music all kind of happened at that time.
Yeah.
Also, it was a boom in Atlanta's music in that period of time. This is like Bone Crusher came out. We're talking Outkast is at its prime. I think Love Below dropped in 2003, which changed my life. I heard, Andre Benjamin just kind of melding all of these forms of music all in one. Like on that album, my favorite things is over a breakbeat. So I'm hearing Coltrane. I'm hearing all of these influences of music, but melding together in a way that I thought was super unique. And it just early on, she told me like, yeah, these lines don't need to exist, because so that had a huge influence on me musically, right? And then, like I said, the R&B, I heard Confessions. I think Confessions dropped around then. Usher's killing it. Jermaine Dupri is just dropping incredible music, and so like that has a huge influences on me as well, just like musically and orally and singing. I've always like kind of grown up in the church, and my dad also is a pastor, went to Harvard Divinity. Like Christianity is a very big part of just how we were raised. So with that, the music, is a huge part of worship, right? So yeah, some of the churches down south are just mega church. It's just like the culture is huge. So like that has a huge influence on me. Also, my family's from the South. My parents are high school sweethearts from Magnolia, Mississippi. So it was very much closer back, closer to family, and close to just that culture that they grew up on. And then also then at that time, I think John Mayer, man, was dropping some crazy, just like dropping, he was dropping classics at that time. No Such Thing and Daughters. And some of those records just had a lasting impression on me. I remember he wrote that song, I've been driving down 85 and
why Georgia? Why?
Why Georgia? So I'm in Georgia, it just really connected with me.
I'm driving 85 in the kind of morning that lasts all afternoon. I'm just stuck inside the gloom. Four more exits to my apartment, but I am tempted to keep the car and drive and leave it all behind.
So I think it's no surprise that, years later, I tried to blend all of this folk, pop, country, soul, R&B, and jazz, and it's all in my ear.
But you decided not to pursue music in college originally. You came from an academic family. Maybe there wasn't.
My parents both went to Princeton, and the bar was high. You know what I'm saying? And still is. It's in the sense that even with the music that I make, it's my a lot of our conversations are always on the why, the impact it has, the socioeconomic kind of impact, the conversations around it, the meanings behind things. So like that's always been implanted in it. I never, I feel like I don't make music for the sake of just making music. It's always been a deeper thing, and how it has to intersect with something political, social. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
these kind of larger, how it functions in society and things like that. So I think, I very much appreciate that. Now, at the time, you're younger, your brain isn't fully formed. You see things in a very myopic kind of way. And I'm just like, no, I just want to play saxophone. But yeah, come senior year of high school, I had done Young Arts, and I had done Grammy Band, where, I'm playing with some of the better musicians in the country, done the all county, all state stuff a few times. And I think it really came down to like a pretty frank financial decision.
Because they gave you full ride if you stayed in DC.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a benefit, part of the just kind of academic benefit. My dad was able to negotiate where all of his children would go to Georgetown for free. And I was like, and I get it. Like, my wife is a professor at LMU now, and like, there are all these amazing little benefits sometimes that come through, your offer and all of that, right? So, at the time, I think I was thinking I just wanted to go to New York and go play. And I got into, Howard, all these, a lot of great HBCUs, and then Georgetown, Howard, University of Maryland, New School, Manhattan School of Music, all these places. But it ultimately came down to, my dad was like, look, you want to take out loans to go to New York? Look, man, I think you should maybe do this. And I was like, all right. I didn't want to hear it, I think, at 17, but I'm so glad.
It's interesting, man, because, in the end, his strategy, whether or not he knew it, paid off. You got into school, you started, and then you were able to transfer.
Oh, yeah. Perfect. It's one of those things where God's plan, like, it really is larger than you can see at the time.
Yeah.
It's a huge theme on my record, even that tune, Let Go.
Yes, Let Go and Let God.
You plan and God laughs, because there's so many times that I've seen it in my life where I envision something happening a certain way and at a certain time, and it always works out in a different timeline, but oftentimes a lot better than I first imagined. And I'm very grateful for those 2 years in DC, because not only did going to school for free give me leverage later on in my negotiation, but it also afforded me just a lot of performance opportunities in a smaller market than New York, where I'm like, 17, 18, 19, getting to play now with all of these incredible musicians in DC that are way older than me, schooling me on tunes and like getting me to run jam sessions, and then building my confidence up as just a performer and artist in the city, building a name a bit. And I learned a lot of tunes. I played a lot of different shows and a lot of different gigs, and I played for 18th Street Lounge used to be this crazy gig I'd play at.
On the top floor. The top floor had the music.
Floor, bro. It was crazy. You know what I mean? I would see some wild stuff up there too. And I was like, it just really trial by fire, just trying to figure stuff out up there. But I grew up a lot in DC musically. Learned a lot of music, like a lot of different styles of music, and then made a lot of really cool relationships. Chris Fun was an early one, who was touring with Kenny Garrett at the time, but to get to play with him all the time and talk with him and hang with him. And then same with Ben Williams and me and Salim, all these people that would come through. And then they were all working as well with large artists. So Chris Fun used to work with Christian Scott. So it was like one of the first times I got to hear about him. And then me and Salim was playing with Roy Hargrove. So Roy Hargrove would come through DC all the time, and boom, they're playing it on U Street, and then I get to come in and get to hang out. And I got to play with Roy on a couple tunes back then, like, just things like that. You know what I'm saying? That, DC was a beautiful 2-year period that really got me ready, I felt like, for New York.
I like the way you describe also understanding like what the life of a musician would be like and how music works in a community, independent of going to school and all that, like seeing it in action first, as opposed to going to school for it and then figuring that out.
Right. And I couldn't imagine it any other way. You know what I mean? I'm like, wow, like I really got to see how it works, the economics of it, the politics of it, everything, like the real scene. And then you go to school, and I was like, oh yeah, I've never learned solfege before. Let me learn this stuff. You know what I mean? Juilliard like really pushed me in a lot of ways, for sure. I got my skills to a certain level. But that performance and work experience is like, bar none. Like you can't get that anywhere else, but like the street, really. You know what I mean?
Totally. And I saw you said in another interview that Samora Pinderhughes called you, and that's part of what motivated you to go to New York.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, it was Luke Salenza, but Samora was there.
Uh-huh.
So these were again, how I said I did Grammy Band and Young Arts. So these are guys that I knew that were like from all over different, states. So they're from Cali, I guess. And then Luke is from New York, but we had done Young Arts together, while I was in high school. Or rather, I was already a freshman at Georgetown, but yeah, we knew each other.
Yeah.
And they had gone on to pursue music school straight out of high school. Then I went to Georgetown to study English, African American studies, blah, blah, blah. I get a call though from Luke just checking in, and it was my birthday as well. So maybe he was like, hey, happy birthday, blah, blah, blah. You're not going to believe who's here. Josh Crumbly's here. Some more, but all these people. And I was like, oh, cool. What's up, guys? How y'all doing? They're like, bro, you got to come to Juilliard, man. I was like, for real? Like, we'll see. They're like, no, really, just apply. And at the time, they were like, the Reardon Anderson twins were there. They were great. They're from Maryland, but they were graduating. Eddie Barbash was there, but I think he was leaving. Yeah. And they were like, I think there's an opening, bro. I think you should really apply. So I did. Only school I applied to transfer just to see, and yeah, I got in. Everything worked out. Like I said, matched scholarships, and it seemed like everything just kind of aligned,
Yeah. So as you were then embarking on what followed, where you really made a name for yourself as a jazz musician, working with Christian Scott, working as a sideman in other projects, even making your own solo records where you were, I can see you trying on like different combinations of elements in the development. Like, well, what if it's a little more electronic? Or what if even like the first time you sang, it seems like on a record, it was still in a more acoustic context. It was like, okay, I'm going to make a jazz record, but I'm going to sing, but it's still, don't worry, it's still, everything feels live still,
I can't go on now without you by my side. I can't go one day from wanting your body next to mine. All day, all night, I'm thinking your beauty.
Like, at what point are you starting to think, okay, I think I maybe want to switch this up a little bit, or I think I maybe want to try to like actually be a performing singing artist and songwriting artist in that way?
It's just been such a slow, gradual process, man. I don't know if it's ever been a premeditated thought. It's been I should say it's been just a steady and slow evolution or progression. I've never really thought of myself any different, but certainly looking back, the output, has definitely changed and evolved in the sound as well. But I don't know if it was ever a conscious choice. It's just been Fire Sign for sure was like the most R&B I've ever done, and the most a project where I sang the most.
And I know that you want me, yeah. So I'm needing you to come home with me. Oh no. Oh yeah. Oh. Yes, baby, you are.
And in my head, I think I've always thought of it percentage-wise for sure. It's like, how much is instrumental, how much is vocal?
Yeah.
And what do I want people to walk away, seeing and feeling? Like, it's pretty split down the middle. Is he more this? Is he more that? And I've always been, like I said, somewhere in between is a tune, but also very much a mission statement. And then I really feel, that I like to exhibit, the sound of both of these styles and try and blend them the best I can that feel natural to me.
Yeah.
But I guess I've gotten more confident, and confidence really just comes from just doing it more often, just getting more reps in, like anything else, like I did on the saxophone. I've certainly gotten a little more comfortable saying like, oh yeah, no, I sing.
Yeah.
I do this, It wasn't always that way. I used to just feel like, oh yeah, I play saxophone, I'll sing a little bit. But now I'm like, no, I'll do both.
I appreciate that you are trying to make them, and you are making them, live in the same world, because I think for years what I've seen with my jazz musicians, forcing them, squeezing them together. Yeah,
like literally, like even in my track listing, now we're gonna go from a sweet ballad to like boom, my balls to the wall sax. But it's like sometimes you got to. Sometimes that's just the art of it all. Is that kind of rough around the edges approach. I try. So it's something I've thought about for sure. But
You know, a lot of times when instrumental artists make music that is influenced or in reaction to what's happening in the world or making a political statement or whatever, it's abstract because, I mean, you can feel it sometimes in the music. You can feel music is angry or music is elated or whatever. But when you're singing about something, it's much easier than to say, no, it's clearly I'm talking about something. I have a message that's deeper than just, as you say, than just like chops.
Mhm.
And considering how mission-oriented it sounds like you have been and felt like you have to be making music for a higher purpose other than just like that it sounds cool, you know, maybe allowing yourself to sing also gave you a lot more flexibility in terms of how you were able to do that, if that makes any sense, you know, that you had things to literally say with words.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's afforded me definitely some responsibility. I mean, some flexibility with how to go about that. It's also, it's funny, it's a Freudian thing, but maybe that's true. It is a responsibility as well that comes with that, and vulnerability, and just like, wow, now you really out here, man. Like, you know what I mean? It's a pressure that comes with that as well. I'm like, whoa, you can feel oftentimes artistically and musically so bare in that kind of, as a singer. Man, so much work that comes with it. It's crazy, and discipline, but yeah, I'm centered by the fact that I try and just be as honest as possible. I try and grow and get better every day. And vocals are one of the most exposing things you can do. It's it's difficult, and same with songwriting. It's so, you know what I mean? Even this album, I really try and I journal. I try and be as cathartic as I can while writing these, writing out this, how I feel and what I'm going through and what I'm experiencing. And then to try and transform some of those things into song is a very vulnerable kind of thing. And to put that into words and share that is like, oh my goodness, it's a lot. But yeah, it's like, I feel like that's important because I feel like I felt that that's what was missing amongst some of my peers while I was in school. I've been surrounded by a lot of incredible talent and incredible music and musicians and work ethic, but definitely that piece of sharing your emotion and sharing who you really are is a scary, daunting task. And I think as an artist, that's the thing you got to dare to do, because most people really, that's the part that people are connecting to in the first place, the humanity. So why hide behind our technique when we could lead with our heart and with who we are? You know what I mean? It's scarier in a way, but I've always been that way, and I want to lead with that. And I feel like that's while a lot of great artists do, I just feel like as a lot of my musician friends, like I want to lead us in that way, in that particular way. Like let's lead with that.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you are very driven by, motivated by, called to the emotional aspect in music.
Yeah, absolutely.
Connecting with emotion.
Yeah. It always has been that in church, at home. The songs that I like have always pulled that out of me. I've always connected to those, the deeper kind of emotional elements in music for sure. While I'm also still connected, cerebrally and intellectually and musically. I love that part of it. And some about even that time in Atlanta, like we talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of that music that I listened to then, like Why Georgia, or like I love a lot of Emily King's music that I've discovered later, and it's like it connects to this nostalgic kind of melancholic thing that just hits me deeply. And I write a lot of music from that space. I use chords that speak to that. I like a lot of flat 9 and flat 13 kind of chords that give me those feelings. Like they're musical devices, but ultimately unlock certain emotions to me in my mind based off of whatever sensory memory I have. Minor, major chords and certain things that just feel like a blend of happy and sad. Obviously the blues, they're just things like that I really like. Yeah,
well, you put out a single last year that's on this record called The 90s. I Want to Love You Like the 90s.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Oh, man, deep one.
Well, I want to talk about it. I was thinking about like when I saw it, I was like, what do you remember from the 90s really? Like,
I knew you were going to say that. Like, you don't remember nothing from the 90s? Right.
But that's the point. It's like it's a nostalgia for something that you kind of, it's almost like it doesn't matter if you fully experienced it or not. It's almost a longing for the thing that you didn't experience.
Man, if I can get real though, it's like a feeling that I felt growing up. yeah, like it was just a period of time where I felt so much love in my household, even. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
I think as we got older, the life gets more difficult. You know, things between my parents got a little more difficult, and in some ways, it's about, yeah, topically certainly about the art and the film and all these incredible advances that I feel like we made. Like, I mean, we grew up, my dad's a huge film buff. We grew up watching like Spike Lee films, and Eyes on the Prize and all these incredible, pieces of film and art and shows and music and everything that seemed to be progressing in the 90s. But I think, yeah, personally, on a deeper level, in my head and in my heart, it just felt like, oh man, such a good, happy, beautiful time during my adolescence. You can feel it as a kid. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, we've had periods, I feel like, late, after that maybe weren't so. We got a little rocky. So to some degree, I think it's, yes, about the time in general for everybody, but then personally for me, like, nah, like it felt like happy times.
It was like before you realized that things could be upended, that this could be broken in some way.
And then we moved, yeah, exactly. And to some degree, even our move to Atlanta was like kind of in 2000 was kind of like an end to that saga, into that period of time. And I think that, it's interesting. It's interesting. There's something there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, that song is kind of both about what I went through personally, but then also like, yeah, the 90s were fly and they were dope and they were great. And the movies were beautiful, and Black Love was like highlighted in such a beautiful way.
Love me, my sweet and chocolate lovey. I miss the way you love me. Just love me like the 90s, oh babe. You put your dreams to the side. Just come along if you wanna be with me for the ride. I don't wanna be the one to tell you how to be in the night. You can be who you like, you can do what you like.
Thank you for being real about that and sharing that with me. And also, it's so interesting how things like that can operate on multiple levels. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
That's your personal truth, but it's also, and that's what they always say about writing. The secret to writing is like, your personal truth will resonate as more universal.
Absolutely.
In the video, there was this other piece of it that I loved, which is like these just little subtle things, like all the tropes of those videos of like, the silk shirt buttoned all the way up.
Come on, girl. I was on my bleak. I was on my that Spike. That was from like Mo Better Blues.
Exactly. Oh, totally, man. And also the wine, always red wine, deeply filled, big wine glasses filled
That's
with
hilarious.
wine.
Peep that. Yes, bro. I was like, is anyone gonna drink? I was actually drinking, but yeah, that was a lot of fun.
That was always like, that was the image of sophistication and elegance, and there it was in the video, and it did evoke, even though I was like, he was like 5 years old when this stuff is good. But on the other hand,
I grew up watching all that stuff, Boomerang, and sure.
And also on the record, you talk about, though, literally you talk with your parents about, like, you're not just burying this stuff in the songs, then you like open it wide open and you interview them about how to keep love going and what happens in relationships in life. I mean, you brought that right into the project.
Yeah, man. I wanted to, well, with their permission, of course, I wanted to just share a bit more of like who I am. And in order to do that, you got to explain and maybe just showcase like where you came from and who you came from.
Yeah.
And
my point is that you guys are doing the work you need to do for yourself all along the way in your relationship, and do it as parents as well. And that way you will find the time to do the balance, because I do think it's important to continue to cultivate your life and your passions and what you want to do, and that you're communicating each
yeah, I've got two incredibly beautiful, intelligent parents that, against all odds, beat all the statistics you can think of to leave Magnolia, Mississippi, go to Princeton, marry, for 30 plus years and raised four, Black men that have all gone on to lead incredible, pretty successful lives. It's just an incredible blessing, and it's a plan that they really set out to accomplish. And I'm just incredibly honored and as a new father, I'm just like inspired by that and the intentionality that went into everything. It's so much work.
I was going to ask you that. I'm a father too, and when I hear stories like that, I immediately check myself and think, am I intentional even like to a percentage of what that is? Like the amount of work and determination and agreement, this is what we want to make and create for our children. Like, I don't know if I am that intentional in the choices that I make.
All you can do is, aspire to do that and to, meet at least a piece of that. But yeah, I'm like, it's just, I just feel so incredibly blessed, man. And it's just, I think I might even said at the end of the record to my dad, like it's just like, yeah, I'm just so blessed, and that like this didn't happen by mistake. You know what I mean? Yeah. You prayed on this. You prayed on us every day, and planned for a lot of this and a lot of the, and helped to provide, and help to like strategically cultivate our passions and do what we needed to do to get here. I specifically remember being like in martial arts, basketball, music, and all these different things at like 8, 9 years old, Yeah. And all of us, and then seeing kind of what stuck. And my baby brother, it was sports. He went D1. Me and Brendan, the middle kids. Brendan goes by Star Child, but he's an incredible musician and artist and works with Solange and now Maggie Rogers, and he's just great. Went to school for drama. So we've had, we've been blessed to be able to do what we love. And then my older brother is just a consultant, and he's just killing it. But like, like this was thought about, planned, and executed on. And he instilled in us like just a great drive, I think, both my parents, and remind us where we came from. Like my dad's house was like the size of this room,
Yeah. So how does that, because you have a young child, right? Like a couple of years old, maybe?
Almost, a year and a half, just about. That's my guy, August. Hey, that's my boy, August.
Congratulations. I saw on your Instagram. That's how. Oh, and it's also, is it not the cover of the album?
For sure. Definitely. Yeah. He's on the album cover.
Yeah. So, I mean, so you're very forward about it. You're very outward about it. Like, you have a child, you married, celebrate your family, put them on the cover of the album.
Yeah. I know. It's rare. Yeah. It's rare. It's rare in that, in the sense that like, I do feel like in the industry, it seems almost like, oh, people don't do that, but it just feels right to me. With like where I am in this part of life, for sure. It's been a huge transition, you know what I mean? From my record in 2020 to this, it's like so much has happened. I moved across the country, got married, and had a child, bought a house, all this stuff that comes with it. It's been a really, big transition. But
did you move because your wife had the job? Mm-hmm. And are you in LA?
Yeah, I'm in LA. Yeah, absolutely. I think New York and LA were kind of the two places I always, wanted to be. I always envisioned a bi-coastal life at some point that we talked about like years ago. Cause like my wife's from Cali, you know what I mean? So I met her in 2012. I think in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh yeah. Cause I've been coming out here for holidays for years, you know what I'm saying? So I think I had always known at some point we're going to make it out here. She finished up her PhD, her doctorate program over at Princeton. We were living in Jersey in 2019. And then she finished up like in 2020, and we were like, went on the market. And I think a few offers she got were just like in Cali.
From your point of view, like obviously it's a very rich and exciting time. Also be doing what you're doing in LA probably makes more sense for you to be in LA with the kind of music you're making right now.
That part, man. It's like, again, it's how so many things align, that seemed almost out of your control, but feels destined. LA, I mean, you could talk about on one level, just like the Hajj. It feels like a lot of just artists made during the pandemic to LA. Everyone's like, I'm getting up out of New York, getting out this tiny apartment. The prices are too high. It's just crazy. I want to go out to the beach and then go on some hikes and stuff and just see something different. So, and particularly at my age, I turned 30 when we moved out here. So it's just like, I feel like a lot of people felt like, all right, I've done my 10 years in New York, up to 10 years plus. And I'm going to go try something different. So a lot of my friends and band members actually moved out here. Yeah. And we hang and play all the time. You know what I mean? So it hasn't felt like uprooting in that sense, which I think initially I had feared, but now it just felt like a kind of natural evolution.
Yeah.
Like now we're right here and we just link up and make music, and it's a little more spacious and sunny. You know what I'm saying? So it felt like the right time in a lot of ways. And then, like you said, like industry wise, like Jesus, Grammy week was crazy. So much going on here. In a very different kind of way. Almost like the politics and stuff of the industry. There's a lot more of that happening, but now that I'm delving more into songwriting and producing, and one of my best friends, actually, John Sweet, we were roommates at Juilliard. You know, he's really, I don't even know if he plays a lot of jazz piano anymore, even though that's what he got a degree in. He's really producing a lot more now, and he's pretty deep into like Boy Wonder's camp.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Drake's music, a lot of Kendrick's music, and he's just really tapped in. We've been working a lot more together now that we have so much more FaceTime, and that's been great. It's led to a lot of really cool collaborations and been able to be a part of a lot of the R&B and pop music of today, which is fun.
And how did you get who brought you in, and how did you get pulled in on the Taylor Swift record?
Oh, John. Yeah. So yeah, we got this group text going, man. It's like me and Jahan and Enrique and my boy Ray, and like most of us went to school together, all best friends. And a lot of times we just send ideas and voice memos and stuff in there. And I think I sent him a voice memo a couple of years ago. You know, sometimes this stuff takes time, but yeah, I sent him a voice memo that had then been flipped, manipulated, keys might have changed, and ended up in a Taylor record, which is crazy. Lavender Haze.
Shit is new to me. Oh yeah.
Tell me about that text thread. So you'll
Yeah.
What will you throw at each other? Like how developed is a voice memo that you'll say? Is it just a cappella melody?
That one was just me, just me and a little keyboard, and that's all that one was. But a lot of the time it's honestly it's stuff he needs, like, yo, does anyone want to remake this guitar part? Does anyone want to can anybody y'all throw horns on this? Like we just did some horns for John Batiste's new project, so he'll throw that in there. And then we just, boom, drag in the Logic, and I go track some horns real quick, send it back, and that's kind of how we just kind of keep things moving. And you never know where things end up sometimes.
Yeah.
It's cool. It'll be cool. Like, oh, my lawyer's about to hit you. But you know what I mean? And I'm like, okay, something might be happening. And that's kind of how it goes. But we just try and hit each other back as soon as we can and throw ideas out there. Sometimes it's song ideas, and sometimes, like you said, a lot of time it's from his camp where he needs things done. And we're just like,
be available, be ready for it.
Pretty much.
It's funny when we were talking earlier about like all the saxophone stuff, the Brecker stuff, and the, Grover Washington, and the sound of, you didn't say it, but Dave Sanborn was very active in the 80s and pop music.
Oh yeah,
also,
for sure. And David Sanborn, yeah.
And even Phil Woods is on some big hit records in the 70s.
Old record, crazy. Yo.
There would be the spot for the saxophone solo on a lot of hit songs.
Definitely.
But now there's the way the horns are interacting. I mean, maybe you could look at Roy Hargrove as an example of one sort of school, but then in LA also, that seems like the saxophone has become sort of like the texture that gets thrown on a lot of records now, where it's like the layered saxophone vibe. And
that's my thing, man. Yeah, I've been doing that a lot. I even have a splice pack that ended up doing pretty well with
cool.
saxophone stacks, I think it's called Brax Stacks. But yeah, that's something I did like years ago. And it's just been a texture on a lot of my records where I'm like, I'll have to stack chords like this and then play on it. Even my Tiny Desk, you can see I did some of that live, but like it's it's a really cool warm texture, like you said, and it's it is cool that it's becoming more prevalent. And as far as the solo is concerned, I would love to see more of that come back, but we'll see. We'll see with time.
I guess, there was a time where it was decidedly uncool to put a saxophone solo on a mainstream record. Like it went to a thing where it was like, no, we don't do that anymore after having been done so much.
Yeah.
And I was always so upset about it when people like laugh at the saxophone in popular music. I just think it got taken so far.
It did. It's been parodied to a degree that's like almost too much, especially like the George Michael joint, that joint. Yeah. It's been parodied to a point where sometimes it can be a joke, but it's like, no, we got to just rebrand that and try and bring that one back, because the horn solo is fire. I'm certainly hearing a lot more trumpet. I think it's like a lot of Latinx music is starting to become really popular. I'm seeing a lot more of that. And my boy Enrique has played with some really cool artists and stuff in that way. So that's dope too. I'm starting to hear more, a lot of trumpet. And Afrobeat has a lot of saxophone. I've been hearing, more of that. Just little saxophone parts and stuff in some of that music. So that's cool. Overall, make it to just hear horns and natural instruments, like that's what I want to be a part of. Like that, it's important. It's important that people hear that, young kids grow up knowing what these instruments are and what they sound like. I think it's, I don't want people to forget that.
Well, I think in a way that is part of, you talked your Freudian slip earlier about responsibility. One of the pieces of the puzzle for you seems to be that you are going to be an advocate for playing an instrument well, and people might discover you eventually through your songs, but then when they see you pick up the instrument and play it, it could be exposure for the first time, even for people to see an instrument played like that.
I feel exactly that, no matter what. And I've certainly have had execs and people, A&Rs, and people like, man, maybe you should just sing, just do you and the guitar. I'm like, no, man, like there's going to be a saxophone solo, and I don't care if it gets less listens or it's not going to get played on whatever, because it's. So yeah, that's my little stubborn part of my personality probably, but I think, because that's just important to me. The real instrument, the solo, the information, the history. And I think through my playing, because that's what I lead with, I'm like, that will be there. Yeah. Regardless of whether something's going to be get more numbers because there's less instruments or something.
Right. The fewer instruments, the more numbers you get. Is that?
Or I should say more instrumental solos. I mean, you could have a lot of instruments, but more so like the solos. People think like people tune out at this point.
Yeah.
Or, oh, this solo's too long. Why don't you cut this out? I'm like, no, let it rock.
Well, are you into that whole thing, that whole shorter songs, TikTok streaming, like this become a thing where people are making songs shorter because they don't need them to be long?
I know, that's true. To a degree, I think I was like, all right, 8-minute songs, maybe more like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
That's just been like, all right, we don't need to take 3 choruses on this tune. Like even my records, like No Doubt, I remember being in the studio being like, all right, that was fire, but like, let's do one chorus.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that's all you really need to say.
Yeah.
On the record. And then let's go off live.
Yeah.
And people can pull up to the show and like, oh, you know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
And Miles was even about that. It's like, no, the record's kind of a promo in a way. It's like, this is like promotion for the, I don't need to go crazy. I'm gonna state the melody, keep it moving.
Yep. Yeah. And remember that, to a certain degree, you put on a record because you want to have a nice time listening to the record, what I mean?
And capture the mood. Yeah. Right. And because I'm emotion based, I'm like, no, let me get the point across.
Yeah.
Get the mood and the melody and the point across.
Yeah.
And then, and cut out whatever else, almost like very much like an essay, anything that's too extraneous that I think isn't serving the thesis statement.
Yes.
If that makes sense. You know what I'm saying?
It totally makes sense. That really makes sense. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. What is not serving this idea? We have an idea here we're trying to accomplish. Does this serve that or not?
Yeah, exactly. You get it. Yeah, that's all. Yeah.
Why? Mm-hmm. What is the title? Who Are You When No One Is Watching? What does that refer to?
On one level, like I said, just wanting to share more of who I am, where I come from.
So it's who am I when no one's watching?
Yeah, that was really what prompted, as a question to myself, almost, you know what I mean, an introspective kind of conversation. That was what prompted it, you know, and what I feel comfortable sharing and what I don't. And then it kind of led to like in this social media age that we live in, this, how everyone, you know, tends to kind of curate who they are, is just very interesting. And I've noticed a lot of just like a separation, even like people I've met that are, you know, have a lot of following, a large following, act a certain way online and be sometimes completely different. I'm like, oh, well, that's fascinating. You know, this whole concept of almost like having like avatars or just different parts of your personality. I've always tried to just portray myself as like who I am and the values that I value, and, you know, really try and show those and display those. Obviously, you're not going to see every facet of who you are online, but the things that are important, you know, shouldn't be like the opposite of who you really are. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I'm seeing more of that, and that's been fascinating. So I'm just like, look, this is a weird time we're in. I want to just be as honest and transparent as possible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Particularly in this TikTok era. It's just interesting.
How do you deal with it? How do you manage social media, and what to, like, is that part of your discipline? Is that part of your routine? Like, okay, I got to deal with the horn a little bit. I got to deal with some record release stuff. I got to like write a song. I'm on this text thread with my friends about production, and also I need to make sure I
raise your child.
I'm also
and we're like part time for the most part. Like we only have daycare. Like that's why I do my interviews Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because Tuesday, Thursday we're pretty much at home. So trying to get everything done in a 3-day period is wild. But I'll say, it's still not as high on. It's not that high on the priority list, but it's getting. I'm seeing like this is just for the as we get older and the generations just start to, you know, like it's a way to just kind of stay connected, and trying to find like maybe fun in it, and joy in trying to make things work within these confines is interesting, I guess. I'm still wrapping my mind around it because it's constantly changing. But I'll say. I think I feel most comfortable probably posting and sharing like performance stuff, and then just kind of highlights of just whatever's happening in life. But as far as TikTok is concerned, like, I don't know, trying to figure it out, bro. Trying to figure it out. You know, no real judgment on it. I just trying to understand it and how to operate, because evolution is this naturally part of this game, and we will always be affected by tech. And that's just kind of what it is. So trying to figure that out and stay who I am. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I mean, as they say in the video for 90s, he says, you've got the phone and it's connected to the technology. You know, we've all got our phone connected to the technology.
Exactly.
We want to stay connected to it.
Masego was hilarious.
He was very funny. So you have this thing you say to Masego at the beginning of that video where he says, I'm going to bring a girl over to the house. And you said, she's not the one with the bad teeth.
Well, you're not bringing Cassandra with the busted teeth, are you, bro?
No, I'm not bringing her. She's new. And she's very nice. Oh, no. She's not a dentist.
Oh, yeah. That's just a bunch of random improvs we did. That was like, we did 10 takes of that. It was just stupid.
But I read an interview with you in 2014, where you were asked, what would you do if you weren't a musician? And you said, orthodontist.
Yeah, I did. It's true.
And I was like, there's a teeth thing going on. There's like he's thinking about teeth.
I am. It's probably one of the first things I noticed. Yeah, that's nuts. That's crazy. I've always been into that. I don't know why. Yeah, man, just like bicuspids and all the premolars. I've been into, I don't know. Don't know why that stuff is always stuck with me.
Is this real? Because when I read that, I was like, I feel like he just chose just a random answer, just like a ridiculous answer.
No, I was dead serious. Like that would be it.
That's it. Orthodontist.
I don't know.
I dig it. I mean, I think it's good to know like what it would be, because I feel like, I'll tell you, I got to the point in my life where I said to my wife, I would probably even get a job right now if I thought I was qualified for anything other than what I have been doing.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, practically no. I'm not going back to school for 8 years or whatever. But that's another interest. I'd say I'm like, I think I could get into it.
Yeah. So do you think, now that you're so focused on your solo project, how do you think about integrating collaborations with other artists like you've done for so long.
Yeah, on like the touring front, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, the touring thing, that with the family, it has to just make sense. It's case by case. Like Marquis, we've been talking about like, when he wants to do his next project and maybe wants to tour, we'll figure that out. It's going to be case by case. Like, even now I set up my tour, so it's like I'm doing a West Coast leg, then a break, so I'm just not gone for long periods of time. Then the East Coast, so like I go out March 2nd on tour, and we go to like the 12th. Take a break, pick back up in April, East Coast, break, pick back up. You know what I mean? Just how I'm making it work for me and my family.
Yes.
And myself, so it's not so crazy.
Yes.
Probably more expensive to not, to spread it out like that, but it is what it is. That's what I think we need to do. So to answer your question, like on the touring front, I think it's just really case by case, but I would go out for a week or two with a couple guys and then come on back home and still do that. But most of my collaborations are just studio wise. Like you're sending me, things to lay saxophone on, or I'm pulling up to the studio to go lay a solo or whatever.
You're so LA, man. Look at you. You're so LA.
I know. Like Andrew Renfro's got an album. He wants this next project he wants to work on. So February 27th, we're going to hit the studio out here.
Yep.
So I've done some rehearsals with him, and same with Pinson and my boys. Like, I'm gonna play on all of my friends' records, and we're gonna do that. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, Braxton, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you for getting real with me a little bit and for sharing the whole story and talking about the record. It's really a treat.
Thank you, bro. It's great to meet you, man.
There he was, my friends, Braxton Cook. What a beautiful guy. I'll be back again in your headspace with another deep dive before you know it. Until then, I'll talk to you soon.
This has been a WBGO Studios production. To learn more about WBGO Studios' award-winning podcasts, special concerts, live streams, and more, visit wbgo.org/studios.